Okay, well, we'll give her a shot, I think. We'll go ahead and call a regular scheduled council meeting to order at 7:04. Okay, I guess if we have visitors here and they would like to state their name, we'll go ahead and do that at this time.
Nathan Sherry's giving us a thumbs up.
Okay, got you, Sherry.
Marge Womack.
Marge, okay, gotcha. There's some on here that are just guests. I'm not sure of everybody's number, but if you guys would like your name recorded, you're welcome to let me know. Okay, we'll get rolling. Additions to agenda. Does the council have any additions?
I do, Nathan, to talk about the website stuff.
Okay.
And by the way, Janice, I know you asked me and gave me an additional opportunity, and then I talked to Nathan the next day, and he brought up a new topic. So if you're smiling somewhere thinking, boy, he added to the agenda again, yes, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry, Stephen, can you repeat what you wanted added? Sorry.
Discussion of the website, web hosting, email, all that whole area.
Okay. And I will add one. If you guys, some of you may have received my email. I just sent it out, I don't know, 45 minutes ago, so it wasn't very long. If you had a chance to see it, you read it. If you didn't, we're going to add an agenda item for a previous newspaper article. So we'll get to that at the bottom. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes. We've got 3 of them here from October 14th. We'll just go through them in order. So you guys should have those minutes. Any corrections on those?
This is Peter. I have a question.
Okay.
Before my question, I'd like to preface by saying I feel the minutes and agenda have been presented marvelously well this month. They're always good, but particularly good. My compliment goes to the city clerk for such a good job, almost flawless as far as I can see. But on page 1 of the October 14th council meeting, under additions, it says the agenda was approved with added additions. Motion by Councilman Schenk. What was the motion for with regard to the agenda? Have we ever voted on an agenda before?
Yes, so we will ask for additions from the council or from myself, and then we do make a motion and vote to approve the agenda going forward.
But it's approved later on in the minutes here. Maybe I'm mistaken, but
so
under meeting minutes, the next page.
Yeah, so the agenda for the 14th meeting, that's that vote, is to approve the agenda as we have it, and then we can go forward.
Okay.
And then under the meeting minutes, that was from the previous meeting minutes that we would approve.
Okay, I was a bit turned around on that point.
No problem.
Nathan, this is Justin. I had just a correction on the council members. My name wasn't listed on the 14th as being present.
Oh.
I was present. And then,
Sorry about that.
that's fine. I don't know if it matters, but you're not listed there either. I mean, it says that Mayor Luck called the meeting to order, but you're not listed as the attendee, so I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see if we I think it's usually done that way, but we'll add it in there.
And also, this is not strictly about the minutes, but for that topic, I noticed that high-pitched whine in the cell tower is no longer happening. So, just in case anyone's reviewing that, someone took care of it, whatever it was.
Okay, great. Any other, any other corrections for the October 14th minutes? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the October 14th minutes as corrected.
This is Levi, moved.
Okay,
Peter will second.
motion by Levi, seconded by Peter. Any more discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you, council. Motion passes 5-0. We will go through the same thing for the October 21st special meeting. Anything on there? No? Okay. Hearing no corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve the October 21st council meeting minutes.
Peter so moves.
Okay.
This is Levi, I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by Peter, seconded by Levi. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving those minutes as read, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, thank you, council. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, one last set of minutes to go through. The special meeting for October 28th. Any additions or corrections there? And I can add my name on those too, Justin, on both of those other ones if we need to.
Peter moves that the minutes for the October 28th special meeting be accepted as presented.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Does anyone second?
This is Levi, I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Peter, seconded by Levi. Any more discussion? No. Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Peter says aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, council. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, approval of bills. Before we get going too quick, I just want to add that there is, when you guys come in to sign these, there will be an additional line item on there, and that is for an additional $539.98. That was for 2 Microsoft Office purchases. Some of you guys might remember signing some bills that already had that. So we purchased originally 3 licenses through Office Depot, and they sent us the wrong codes. So they ended up sending us some codes to something different. So we actually returned that, and they refunded the money, and then I purchased directly through Microsoft. Same price. I just only bought 2 of them right now instead of 3. So just a heads up, you will see that. Yeah.
I think it's also relevant to note for the council, unfortunately, unless my understanding is incorrect, they credited us back to our account with them. They didn't give us actual cash back, which we'll use at Office Depot eventually, but just as far as where numbers are coming and going, it's worthy of note that I believe, unless I'm incorrect, we're not going to see any type of a return on that money. It's going to be money that does not go out for future Office Depot expenses, right?
Correct. Janice has to do some paperwork with the Department of Commerce for that, because even we were purchasing it, but then it was going to be reimbursed, and that was in the midst of being submitted to Commerce to be reimbursed. So there's a little extra paperwork there, but Janice can fill in if I'm misspoken as well.
No, you're good.
Okay. But there was a little hiccup there. They sent us the wrong codes. It was for a Game Pass or something, so we ended up bagging that, and then I just purchased directly through Microsoft. So just a heads up. Any other questions going forward on the bills? No?
I have a question, item 924, Cashiering Department of Ecology, loan principal repayment. What is the magnitude of the principal on that loan? And what's the loan for?
So that loan is something that was standing before we got here. That's part of the loans for building the wastewater treatment plant. To give you an exact number on the principal there, I don't believe I know that off the top of my head. But
is that a monthly or a quarterly or an annual?
By twice a year.
Twice a year, okay.
Thank you, Janice.
I can get you that number though, Peter. I'll write it on the stickies.
I was just curious. I didn't recognize the amount or the reason for the check.
Yeah, that's part of a long-standing, one of the loans for the wastewater treatment plant that we're still paying on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Are we doing it by document or just all together, Nathan?
Either way, I feel like it's a little cleaner to do it by document if we want to go through the paid claims first and then the unpaid.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Okay. Any other questions on the paid claims? Okay. Go ahead, Stephen. You must have one on the unpaid.
Yeah, I'm guessing the 977 HD Fowler Company supplies for water lines I have a vague memory of us mentioning something about new supply stuff a month or two ago. It's 2020, so time is kind of irrelevant. But I think I've heard of that, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm... This is the best part of Zoom, getting to watch Mr. C laugh. So can you update me as far as making sure that we know what that one's about? Yes,
I can, and you're correct. That is for some new services. So there was one new service put in to the Jill Barth residence, and then as well as we're working behind the town square there to put some in to supply water to the town square, and then there's two other properties there that we are also putting in new water lines. So that's not necessarily for one property, but we have that broken out. Scott's breaking that out, and then that bill actually gets passed on to the homeowner. But yes, that's the supplies. That's what that's for.
In accounting purposes, does that, similar to how you were saying that money gets passed on to the homeowner, is the Inovia funds paying back for, and I know they're all kind of our funds, right, because we're the ones funding it, but as far as where the accounts are coming from, is the Inovia funds paying the city general fund or whatever back for the equivalent of what's coming into the town square project?
To answer that question, at this time I don't know that. I would be in favor of that happening, just because there's grant money available through the Novia project to be able to pay that back.
I would prefer to see that happen, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Nathan, I had two questions when you have a chance.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, to the last question that Peter asked about the paid claims to Department of Ecology, and the answer there was it's twice a year, but then we have on item unpaid claims number 975. So that's the same cashiering department, Department of Ecology, different amount, but also loan principal payment. So is that part of the same loan repayment?
It is going the same place, but that is the second loan. Okay. So there's actually two loans through the Department of Ecology from the original construction of the wastewater treatment plant.
Yep.
So they are broke out separately. We were just going through this today too. So there's actually two different loans, and so the payment for one is for the one loan, and the second payment is for the other one.
Okay. And then my other question was, I know, so 974, right above that, it's a check for Denisa Halling for reimbursement of a clerk's computer. So I know at the last council meeting there was discussion about who was going to purchase it, but so I guess I'm cautious that we have unrelated people. So we have private citizens, not council members, not city employees, not council members or mayor or somebody affiliated with the city, buying equipment for the city to then get reimbursed. So I just would, I don't know if this was a one-time deal or what, but I would just be caught. I just,
right.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Nope. Okay. Any other questions? No, I don't think so. Okay. Hearing no other questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
The bills.
Sorry, the bills.
Well, were we gonna, as far as payroll, I do have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Should we make sure that we were all good? Because I see Wayne Marinholtz on the payroll stuff. And there was at one point a question of requirements and or eligibility in regards to his age. Was that taken care of? Are we all good there?
Yeah. Yep. Janice, he had to fill out his paperwork in order to get his check, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, then I move to approve the bills as presented.
Peter seconds.
Okay, we have motion by Steven, second by Peter. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the bills, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, council. Motion passes 5-0. What'd you ask? I don't think so.
You're muted, Nathan.
I know. I got a visitor here. Hold on. No, I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, a little bit. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, treasurer's report. Mike, I see that you were on here. I will let you take it away.
I am on here. Hey, would you do me a big favor down at the bottom of your screen, Mr. Mayor, under screen share? there's an option there to enable screen sharing for other people in the meeting. So I'd ask if you would enable that for me for a minute. Can you find it?
I have an option for one participant at a time, multiple participants, or advanced. Oh, they're locked by my administrator, which I thought I had those privileges. Janice, is there any chance that you could change that?
She should be able to. I will change that configuration. I don't know if I added you as a default administrator on these meetings, but the account is under her name, so she's the one who could do that.
Yeah, and I thought that I had got in there and changed it so that I had those permissions, but obviously I did not do a very good job.
Okay, it's our first time out. I'll take a look again to make sure we got it for next time.
Well, in the meantime, let me just kind of go through this. Since some of us are on the phone anyway and you wouldn't be able to see it, that's fine. I did send out the October Treasurers Report actually just before the meeting tonight. There were some last-minute changes that I needed to make, just looking at different funds. It was sent out as an Excel document, also as a PDF file, so if when the mayor and the clerk have time, they can forward that on to the council to take a peek at. And I put it in both formats so that if you don't have Microsoft Excel on your computer, you could pull up the PDF and be able to look at it that way. So those will be coming to you shortly. Thank you, Stephen. The month went well. Our funds are strong. We're doing pretty good. There were some issues when you get the file. You may need to open or widen some of the columns up a little bit, because if you're inexperienced with either of these with Excel, forgive me, you may have to widen a column. If your numbers are showing up as pound signs or hashtags, that just means the column's too narrow, the number's too big. So just open the column up a little bit and the number will appear for you. We had a large amount of bank fees this month. I want to check with U.S. Bank to see why we were charged. We were charged $86.70 in some bank fees, and I want to take a peek at that. That's unusual. We've never really seen that before. It really is what they call a coin and currency fee, and so I'll get that cleared up and see if we can't get them to refund that. They're usually pretty good about it because we are a good, solid customer, and we're obviously reliable, so they're usually pretty good about waiving those fees for us. Also, you'll notice when you get the report under street construction, that fund looks like it's about $7,300 in the red. It is really not. That is just a correction I need to make. Those funds that have gone through were pass-through funds for a couple of the street projects that we were doing, and I just need to make sure that they're squared away in the books. So when you see a fund in the red, do not be concerned. I will have it taken care of. It will disappear by the time you see the November Treasurers Report. Other than that, that's I was hoping I could kind of show it to you, but no worries. It'll come through in the email. And if there's any questions about any of the funds, please feel free to ask. Send me an email. And I'll be happy to answer those as soon as I can.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, we'll try to get some of these settings squared away for next go around too, so that we can share things if we would like to. I will tell you, Justin, as much as I fought this, I think this works pretty well actually. So kudos on pushing for Zoom, and Stephen, both of you guys. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Thank you, Mr. C. Appreciate you keeping things straight for us.
I try. It gets a little crooked at times, but usually it's just because my brain works in funny ways, so it takes me a little while to catch up with the books. So, and just to let the council know, the difficulties, I shouldn't say difficulties, the slowness with which your treasurer has moved into the bias system is my fault and my fault alone. I have just been so overwhelmed with other issues, and so I realize it has made life a little bit difficult for our clerk and for the mayor. And so please, if you are frustrated with how fast things have gone into bias, please aim those frustrations at the treasurer and not at the clerk or the mayor. That is solely on me. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that system and getting more proficient at it. My concern really is I don't want to add more work for the clerk or for the mayor. And so I'm going to learn and make it as quick and easy a transfer as I can. So again, if you have a concern, please shoot it my way and let me answer it. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. I'm pretty excited to see what that program can do for us once we get all our numbers in there. I'm sorry, I was talking over somebody. Go ahead, Peter.
Just a question for my clarification. Do you use the same computer program that Janice is using? What program do you use for your bookkeeping?
Yeah, that is a good question, Peter. What I have done is I have just continued the work that was started actually back when Tara Cronrath took over as treasurer. Everything was done basically on paper, and she transferred everything into Microsoft Excel, and Paul used it, the same Excel programs and spreadsheets when he was treasurer, and I've stayed with that. We just need to transfer everything over to Bias now. That'll be done when I can do it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some good stuff we can do once we get all those numbers together, and in Bias, the reports and stuff for budget, all kinds of goodies that we can play with once we get there. So I'm pretty excited. Okay, thanks, Mike. Policy handbook update. So I will start with just saying that we've met, the committee has met a couple of times. We met again yesterday evening and have a couple things that we need to discuss as a council. And since Stephen is so much better at speaking publicly than I am, he is, I think, happily agreed to walk us through that. So I will yield the floor to you, Stephen.
That is a gracious overcompliment, I think, but I will take it and run. Okay, so first to set the mood for this discussion, we are not going to be taking an official vote at the end of this. This is just basically a report out of the committee of Nathan and David and myself. And we're wanting to get the council's feel on this, so please do not feel like whatever is said today, or if we take any straw poll votes, that this is binding. But we've gone through probably about 2/3, maybe a little less than 2/3 of the document in total. We're going to be finishing up the rest of that here shortly, and we wanted to talk about the three large items that we thought are going to perhaps be the biggest sticking points from the handbook. The next point that I would call out is that we are looking on to revise currently. What we are reviewing is the handbook that was sent to us by whoever that company is that we're contracted with for this. So we are not reviewing the current handbook that is in place. That's worthy of note. In fact, I'm not sure if I've even necessarily seen a full copy of that. I know Nathan has one, and I've heard references to multiple copies, and one of the reasons why we're doing this is to get all on the same page. But to note that when we talk about like changes that we're making, it's not versus the current document, it's versus the proposed document as sent to us. Okay, so that being said, there were three large items that we wanted to discuss. One is that there is a section on nepotism in there, and it has a number of restrictions. For the sake of time, I mean, if anyone requests specifically, I can read the section as it was sent to us. But in general, it's basically the intentions of it, I think, are very good. However, because there's a couple of provisions that, like, there cannot be, the city cannot have an employee that's related to a council member, and various other things that make it quite difficult. And as we were reviewing this, I noted that I don't know if this language was taken forward from a previous handbook or whether this was something that the company added in for our good, but it would have been a problem between Mr. Cronrath and his wife when Tara was the treasurer and he was on council. And to me, I don't think that Harrington is necessarily large enough to afford itself the luxury that we're always going to be able to just say, that would be a really great fit, but we just can't do that because you guys are related. I think there's, let me finish my statement, Justin, I'll let you speak there. But the overall, what we had discussed is the committee was to remove the nepotism section. So that is the report out from the committee. However, as I was thinking about it more today, and I tried to get a hold of Nathan, and I didn't get to getting a hold of David, so I'm saying this less as a member of the committee because I just gave you the report out of what the committee discussed on that matter. But as a city councilman, I almost think a better revision to say something very simple, that if there is a relationship of, say, cousin or closer, that any employees hired would have to be approved by the city council. That way we don't have something set in stone that we just can't do it according to our handbook, but there is a little bit of accountability there. The other danger is that if we try and word this and try and say, well, we'll allow this but not that and this but not that, we could spend a lot of time burning on trying to find language that allows us to do everything that we want to do with that type of a problem and nothing that shouldn't happen. So I'll pause with that. Justin, you were going to say something?
I just had a point of clarification, I guess. The situation you just referenced, I don't think falls into that because both of those people were elected officials. The treasurer is an elected position and a council member is an elected position. So if that was your sole basis for removing it, I would probably ask for reconsideration on that recommendation, just because even though the council does not get paid right now, but in the past they have, but I wouldn't consider them employees of the city. And the same with the treasurer is also an elected position. So just, again, a point of clarification.
That's true. I guess I knew that, but I was not thinking of that, and that didn't come up in our discussions. So that's a good call out. I would still personally, and I'll let the other committee members speak for themselves, I would prefer to see it simplified, that instead of trying to call out a lot of specifics, that we just let it fall back on the council to decide yay or nay. Because that way, if there was to be a nepotism, it would have not only been endorsed by the mayor in his desire to hire a person, but also then voted on by the majority of the city council. To me, that is a check that is worth keeping to keep our document simpler and more flexible in times in the future where our city may not be afforded a wealth of choices for particular positions. But I'm just one voice in that. If the council would like to see more specific ins and outs called out, that is certainly the council's prerogative. Are there any other thoughts on that? Again, keeping in mind that today we won't be voting on anything. So we've heard, Justin's input. If anyone else wants to input, the committee will take this back into consideration in our future discussions. And if you wish us to keep something in, then we'll start working towards a recommendation on that direction.
Stephen, this is Peter. Did you say the issue of nepotism was raised in the existing handbook or in the new one that was sent?
I'm not aware, and the committee did not spend time discussing what's in the current handbook. We're mainly just focusing on what we think is appropriate to adopt going forward.
All right, thank you. And one more thing, you said there were 3 items. Are you moving on to the second one now?
Yeah, I will. Levi, do you have anything to say about nepotism before we move on?
No, I do not at present.
Okay. Justin, any any revision, or since you were the driver of saying you want to keep something, and how do you feel about the concept of letting it simply sit with the council to approve or deny anything that meets a certain criteria?
Sure. I mean, I'm fine. I just didn't. My point was, if you were pulling that out strictly because of the situation you discussed, that maybe you'd want to reconsider that based on.
Yeah, no, and I agree that that situation obviously doesn't apply, but let's say that, to me, it doesn't change the overall argument, because let's say that the spouse of a city council member was a very qualified candidate for a position. Do we exclude them exclusively because of that relationship? Obviously, the nepotism is something for us to protect against. I'm not trying to make it a free-for-all, but I'm just saying in a city Harrington size, we might have to give ourselves some extra provisions of flexibility in times in the future where we don't know what kind of access we'll have to resources.
Agreed.
So, okay. Point 2. Right now, there is a concept of engaged to be waiting and waiting to be engaged, which is pretty much Nathan's favorite 2 concepts in the whole entire handbook.
Yeah.
Because the look that comes over his face is just, it's like Christmas morning. So, basically, right now, it's a very complicated, multi-option way of saying what happens if we know that there's going to be something going on and we need access to employees after hours in a we'll talk about this. There's 2 sub-points to this. There's a non-emergency situation that say, if something's happening on Saturday, these are not your normal hours, we need availability from you. Okay, so a non-emergency planned situation, that's one consideration. The other is, what do we do in situations where, like on Sunday, there was an instance where a sewer in town backed up, and what do we do in situations when we have to call in an emergency after-hours situation? So let's talk about that one first. Obviously, that's not going away, or our intent is not to propose that it would. There was a question of what's the minimum callback time, and it was the feeling of the committee that it is only appropriate that if you impose upon an employee's time to come in an emergency, that they are due a certain amount of consideration by default, because you don't call someone and say, hey, we need you as you're sitting down for dinner, and we're going to pay you for a grand total of 15 or 20 minutes. So while it is certainly debatable as to the amount, the committee would like to suggest that a minimum callback time is 2 hours. And that past 2 hours, there is no rounding. So in other words, at least that's the terminology I put it in. There's probably a more official terminology, but to say that it took an employee 3 hours and 5 minutes, that doesn't become 4 hours. Just past the minimum of 2 hours, it's at the time. And so you're guaranteed that if you are disturbed, you're going to get paid at least whatever your hourly rate is times 2. So that, and I'll say the other one as far as the planned thing, and I'll ask for your feedback on that. So we just discussed the non-planned emergency situation. In the planned non-emergency situation, instead of having this engaged to be waiting and waiting to be engaged, which have 2 different rates, and there's different requirements set forth in the handbook that if you're engaged to be waiting, you can do this, or if you're waiting to be engaged, you can do that. In one situation, you can drink alcohol, in the other, you can't, and it's very complex, in my personal opinion. Instead, I think I proposed this thought, and the committee agreed that it was the committee's opinion that it is more proper for in a planned situation to say that we would ask that an employee would work for, say, 4 hours on Saturday. They would have some type of a default task to say, clean the shop, clean the office, something like that. And if the situation that we are concerned about comes up, they understand that as the priority, and they go do that. If that situation doesn't come up, they do whatever the other task is. The benefit with this is, as opposed to the waiting to be engaged or engaged to be waiting, both of those situations that are currently in the handbook result in the possibility that we pay a person at, I believe it's either 100% or 25%, just for the option of having them work. And then it leaves the possibility of a discretion of, well, how could you have said that we needed to have someone available for this time, because it's clearly that wasn't going to happen, or there's a lot of discretion in it. Whereas if we say, look, we're going to need you for 4 hours, if this comes up, you go handle it. If not, you do this. At least when we pay for 4 hours work, we've got 4 hours of benefit. And that still gives us the flexibility to say that the person's available when they would be needed. But I think it's a better value proposition where there's no gambling on whether it will happen or won't happen for the city. So those are the two things. The emergency callback, minimum of 2 hours, no rounding. Planned callback, no on-call, will it happen or won't happen provision. We just say we need overtime, and there's priorities given to the employee for what happens if the event in question occurs. Any thoughts on that?
This is Peter. I have a question, Stephen. What's the difficulty of rounding? You may have said that, but I may have missed it. If they work 3 hours and 5 minutes, I think that was the example you cited.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we interpolate or round to the 5 minutes?
Well, the thing, the thought being expressed is that it would not round up to the next hour. That
Right.
1 minute into an hour does not a whole hour of pay make.
But if they work 3 hours, if they work 3 hours and 30 minutes, that would round up to 4 hours?
No, it would just be at their hourly rate exact.
I see.
And there's a floor of 2 hours.
So we've had some, just to kind of put a perspective on it real quick. If we call an employee on a weekend or overtime at night to, something came up, and I made that call to an employee, or the mayor at the time made that call to an employee and said, hey, there's something going on, I need you to go look at this. That employee, Stephen used dinner. If he was sitting down at dinner and then he or she takes off, goes and deals with it and says, well, it's not an emergency, I can take care of it Monday type of deal. If that only takes a half an hour, we're in agreement that we give them pay for 2 hours. So instead of interrupting their night, they go down, they're only there 20 minutes, they only get a half hour of pay. That floor is 2 hours. So if they go out and it takes an hour and a half, then they get 2 hours. If it takes a half an hour, they still get that 2 hours. And then after that 2 hour mark, it's just a regular rate of pay, however many hours they were actually there.
Is it regular rate or overtime?
It would be overtime, time and a half.
Regular overtime rate.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Justin, you had a question?
Yeah, so two things to what Peter just mentioned and just brought. So it would be overtime only if they were already at 40 hours for the week. Is that correct?
I believe it would be.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know. We need to look at it whether if it's anything over 8 or anything over 40 or either or. I've seen both scenarios, different places of employment.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my experience when I was in that position, what I understood it as is we were at 40, and that's also if well, you should just clarify it however you want to do it. I'm indifferent to that. I just think that because the way it currently stood was if there's a vacation day, if I took a vacation day in the middle of the week, if I was an employee, I worked Monday and Tuesday, took Wednesday off as vacation, came back Thursday and Friday, but then got called in on Saturday to work overtime or Friday night to overtime. We had to look it up. It wasn't because they didn't work 40 hours that week, even though they got paid. So I would just, as you guys go through this or whatever, just make sure those things are spelled out. So the interpretation is, it's not really interpretation. It's cut and dry. Anyone can look at it and make that call as you guys see fit.
Yep.
But that was just there. My other question, I guess, or maybe help me understand. Stephen mentioned in his presentation, I guess I'm assuming it was if you're on call, So we said something that's a difference between paying 25% of the wage or paying the full wage. So is that what that meant? Like if you're on call, we would pay, like I know, different example, but one of the EMTs works in Davenport, right? And she's on call. She gets paid like $2 an hour when she's on call, even if she doesn't go in. Is that what you guys were referring to in that scenario? When he referenced
25% is, if I remember correct, it's waiting to be engaged.
Yeah. Okay. So
There's
on
a more
call.
permissive thing, and then the other, when it's paid 100%, is engaged to be waiting, where you get paid 100%, but you don't have to do any work. And my bigger concern with that one is like, look, if you're getting paid to work, then Harrington should be getting the value of the hour. So to me, personally, the engaged to be waiting really needs to go away, because we don't have the luxury to pay people for time that we don't get work out of. The waiting to be engaged at 25%, I think, is a little bit more debatable, but why we landed on the recommendation to remove both of them and just strictly have overtime was the feeling that, and I guess this is informed by the discussion of 2 new council members and a relatively new mayor. So Justin, you may have a different input on this as a former mayor, but we were looking at the examples that had come up, and Nathan was thinking through things and thought, in general, it seems like this is something that can be managed by either emergency callback situations, which we're not getting rid of, or if there is anything planful, we can say that we're going to take that investment of time a little bit more seriously by saying we're doing 4 hours overtime this week because we know there's this risk. But we do know, at the very least, that we'll get 4 hours of work for it. And so we think we can still manage all the situations, but it makes a clearer accountability for taxpayer funds by doing it that way.
Any other questions? David, do you have anything on that?
No, it sounds good. It's terminology and stuff, but just to refresh everybody, it would be standby pay. But I agree that that's probably not where we want to head that direction, because the mayor and such, you can, if there's something that's planned, we can take care of it. And if something comes up, like a tree fall over the road, emergency situation, we call the crew out. And Justin did bring up a very good point, and we haven't quite addressed that, I believe. But whether it's overtime pay or is it just standard pay, and that's something that we're going to have to pound out. I'm not opposed to giving overtime for a situation, even vacation, and we're just going to have to address in the handbook the hours of duty and what's defined, and get into that.
Yep,
so I think
agree.
that will be addressed, but that's a good point to have brought up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But other than that,
I think we'll be reviewing that in the next committee meeting, most likely. But I'm about 75% sure that that the current handbook that we are, I shouldn't use the word current, the proposed handbook that we are reviewing refers to overtime kicking in on a weekly situation, not on a daily situation. So I do believe that at least the document as it stands that we're reviewing would say that such a callback before the 40 hours would not be overtime pay. So regardless of our intent there, it's something we're going to have to review. The other thing that is, I think, of note that we had discussed committee, this wouldn't have been yesterday, but in our meeting before, was that only the mayor can trigger these situations. That an employee could not determine an emergency situation or a planned overtime for themselves. So,
right.
Question, this is Peter. Can the mayor pro tem not trigger the situation?
Well, if the mayor is out, I believe the procedure is if the mayor is not in the ability to act in his or her capacity, that all of the mayor's discretion becomes to the pro tem.
Okay.
Yep, correct. And that would fall on the mayor to allow that knowledge to the pro tem whether they would or would not be available.
Justin?
I would just to that point too, maybe say the mayor or an appointee, whether that's the pro tem or, because same thing, if the mayor and the mayor pro tem are both going to be out, for instance, for a week at the same time, to be able to have the flexibility to say an appointee, or somebody appointed by, so you can do that. There's some flexibility there, but I mean, just like you said, though, it's not meant to have the employee make up that make that call themselves or be able to derive that decision without some other input.
So we all good to discuss the big last one?
I think
grand
so.
Finale. All right. Leave. So there's a lot of text in here about leave. And as you may have already caught wind, that as we sit down to review a well over 100-page document for a handbook, the committee feels like this is far too extensive of a handbook for a city Harrington size. So while we are looking to be mindful in how we reduce, we are looking to try and simplify language wherever possible, because there are a lot of little provisions. And so we've been looking for how we can hopefully simplify and especially clarify, as there were some questions recently about leave and how that works for city employees. So there's a couple things, and the committee has two proposals, and so it's for council, and I will ask all council members to give their opinion on this, because this will probably give our direction of which option we go forward in trying to craft into what we would actually put into the vote. But before I present those two options, I would say that first of all, the committee is not happy with the use of the word termination in the old handbook or in the new one. We feel like it is an insufficient term to represent the various ways in which employees can come to be separated from employment with the city of Harrington. So we would want, we're going to request, and it is worthy of note that the company that we are working with here is going to help us make sure that all of this is good with legal considerations and everything else. So right now I'm expressing the desire of the committee, and that will be amended, of course, by what we have to do for legal considerations. But the general discussion of one's employment with Harrington coming to an end, we wish to be termed separation of employment. And inside of the term separation of employment, there would be three types of ways that you can be separated from employment with the city of Harrington. One would be termination, which most people would generally know is the thought of being fired. This would be referenced as an involuntary separation of employment, a termination with cause. Second of all, we would call out as appropriate retirement, being a separate type of separation of employment. And then thirdly, a voluntary separation of employment, because we feel like those three situations are distinct. And right now, the language in the old handbook and the one that we are looking at right now is not very clear on what type of a separation is actually being discussed in various circumstances. So we're trying to take some lessons from recent questions about Harrington's leave policy and to make sure that we know how those terms are applicable and to be very crisp and clear on our language with that. So that being said, two options that we would like to propose to the council. The first option would be that we would take the current maximum carryover of hours year to year down from 120 to 80. Of note, any employees for whom this would be a problem would get a payout to make this all good, so no one would lose hours into the vacuum of space. They would get paid out for them as we would reduce down to an 80-hour carryover. There would be an accrual, and to be clear on this terminology, it would be not only accruing in that the more years you are employed with Harrington, the more time off you get, it would be accruing year over year, but it would also be accruing per paycheck, per pay period, that you would get so many hours of time off per paycheck that you work. So it would be a paycheck accrual and a 10-year accrual of year over year. And that is similar to what we have now. Currently there's a pay schedule of accrual that's very weird, that has the math is very strange as far as it's not regular periods that go forward. So we would try and keep everything the same, but to make the numbers not make you want to pull out a calculator. But it would be pretty much the same thing. We just adjust the math a little bit here or there, just to make it easier for people to understand. And then lastly, with that first option, the payout scenarios would be thus. If there is an involuntary termination with cause, there would be no payout of leave. Now, I should clarify, we have not gotten to the point of discussing sick leave yet. So please, council, keep in mind that right now we are just talking about time off leave. Sick leave, we will come with separate proposals after we discuss that section in more depth. But involuntary termination would not receive a payout. Retirement would receive a payout. And as far as voluntary separation, we put this to the council without a recommendation as to whether there would be a payout or not, because there was some degree of disagreement within the committee as to what the city should do in that type of a situation. So again, option one, we reduce the total carryover of hours year over year from 120 to 80, paying out any employees that are over 80 now, or who would be over 80 at the end of a year. It would have roughly the same accrual procedures as what we have now. We would just adjust the table so that it's not so complex. We would pay out for retirement. We would not pay out for termination, involuntary termination, and we leave it to the council to decide whether we would pay out for voluntary separation or not. That is option one. Option two, and then I'll ask each council member for their inputs. Option two is to move to a use it or lose it type leave situation. So what would happen is you would still accrue more time off year over year. So you get more time off for working for Harrington 5 years than you do in your first year, right? So that part of it doesn't change. The year over year accrual schedule for tenure still stays the same as it is now. However, what would happen is that you would get half of all of your hours for the year in January 1st. You would get the other half of your hours for the year on July 1st. There would be no inter-year accrual, so you would not have to wait for each paycheck to get more hours. And there would be no payouts in any situation, except as this change goes into effect, those who do have carryover hours would be paid out to bring them into alignment with this. Just like in the other scenario, I said that when we reduce from 120 down to 80, we would pay out to make that right with the current employees. Similarly, as we would make this change, people would get paid out at that point in time. So this is use it or lose it, no carryovers, two dumps, one in January 1st, one in July 1st. One of the benefits of this, I think, to employees is that you don't have to worry about, like in the beginning of the year, if you want to take time off in the beginning of the year for which you have not accrued those hours yet, it gives you more flexibility to be able to take off time throughout the year evenly. And the lack of a carryover is to encourage the employees to use a benefit that is for their mental health. That is, the primary purpose is not to have it serve, at least in my opinion. Other council members and even committee members may view it differently, but the city provides this benefit for the overall health of the employee, not as an additional financial compensation. So by not paying out, it is encouraging the employees to use the benefit to keep them healthy. So those are the two options. Use it or lose it, or just some minor tweaks over what we have now, changing the carryover, the payout, and the accrual slightly. Justin.
So I had a question on your option 1. So the payout, well, so the accrual, I guess at the end of the year, you would pay out any unused vacation time? Up
No,
to the 8 hours?
no. The payouts would only happen at separation of employment. There's no payout at the end of the year.
Okay, so one of the things that I would say that needs to be considered in that scenario is when I only know this from doing the annual report, is we have a thing in there that talks about long-term liabilities, and in this specific question, we say we don't have any carryover like that, so we don't have to track it, I guess, as a long-term liability to the city. Like if somebody has, say they've worked here for 10 years and they haven't used their vacation, or they've only used half of it, and all of a sudden now they have 400 hours. If they were to separate that year, either retire or potentially voluntary, I guess, then the city would be on the hook for potentially, say in this case, 400 hours. And so I'm one thing I would say, I mean, not just because that's what the annual report doesn't mean we can't deal with it, but we don't typically budget for that either. So I think it would create some potential extra things to worry about. Like we would have to budget for it for each of our employees every year for the potential, I guess, even if they don't do it. And again, this is not to say that it's right or wrong. It's just something that it's different than what we're doing now. So I would,
it's actually very similar to what we should be doing now. As far as I understand it, option 1 is a minor variant over what our current handbook allows for. And again, I haven't spent as much time looking at our current handbook as the proposed new handbook, so I'm not the expert on saying exactly what has changed. But I would say that one of the reasons why I advocated for the second option is not only that I believe it's a more caring thing for the employee, but I do think that it's a more fiscally responsible option for the city as well, to not have long-term liabilities for which we do not know when the appropriate time to schedule for them is.
Sure. No. So as long as you guys are thinking of that, that's great. And when you guys come to present that to the council, but just to make sure that we're aware of, that we as a body are aware of that, because it's not something that we do now. And I'm not a policy expert on I've never seen our handbook. I relied solely on the input from our previous clerk to help me in that process. So I'm just going off of, I would say, hearsay to that degree. So I've never read the handbook, or I've never seen it. I have seen a page. I take that back. But so I don't know if it's right or wrong. But I just doing the annual report, it talks about that. So we would just have to figure that out, and if we go that route, I guess. Thank you.
Justin, before I let you off the hook here, in order to help the committee know which way we should go forward on, do you have a preference between option 1 and option 2?
I'm a believer of it's a mental health thing, and I encourage, I have to encourage my employees at my place of normal business or regular business to take a vacation and whatnot. So I'm a fan of option 2. If I had to pick today, I think option 2 is good both for the employees and good for the city.
Okay. Peter or Levi?
This is Levi. I'll go ahead. I am a fan of the use it or lose it policy. I have worked in situations with both, and frankly, I think they should be taking the time off if they have the time off available to them. That's my current situation at work, and it does incentivize using your vacation and getting some rest.
Do you have any concerns or questions about the options as we outlined them?
No.
Okay. Mr. Davenport.
Peter, tend to favor, based on what's been said here tonight, I tend to favor the use it or lose it as well. But to be honest, I'm not sure I've ever looked at the city's handbook, and I'd like a little more time to ruminate on some of these points and solicit comments from citizens. I see we're being called upon to take some action tonight. I'd like
It's just a straw poll so that we know for the committee how to proceed, but we're setting nothing in stone.
Yeah, good. I favor the use it or lose it option too.
Okay, and if any of the council members change their mind, let Nathan or David or myself know. But it's just we're planning on meeting again tomorrow, so I just wanted to get a straw poll indication of where you're at today. No one's going to try and burn you at the stake if you change your mind. So,
Can you tell us, as the committee, where the committee stands from a straw poll perspective?
so I believe, and I'll let David say his piece here, but we as a committee said that we could back either option and that we wouldn't have a big problem with it. I, of course, I proposed option 2. I'm a believer in it. I've had both work situations. I appreciate the second one. You know, that's the option 2 much more, because it helps make sure it's like I'm not going to let this go to waste. I'm not going to try and cash it out. I'm going to actually use it, and there's bigger restorative benefit, I think, personally. Nathan said that he's worked under option 1 and could feel comfortable with both. David had a lot of experience with option 1 as well, I think, and again, David, you can correct me. I'm not looking to put words in his mouth, but I think he maybe felt a little more comfortable with option 1. But I will say this as the person who proposed option 2, if we decide to go with option 1 as a council, I'm not going to cry about it, because my bigger concern is that I want to reduce the amount of carryover, and we're proposing reducing it from 120 to 80. So I think that either option is a step in the right direction. David, would you like to chime in with anything?
Well said. You did a good job there, Stephen. And just remind everybody that, yes, my experience has been with mirrors, the option 1 mostly. And after listening to the soundboard here, option 2, I'd be fine with either one. Frankly, between now and tomorrow, I'm scratching my head a little bit and I think, try and run down what ifs, what if scenarios. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. You know, I know something's going to come up down the road, and I just want to have something in place as a committee and a council that is the least abrasive and contradictive, and no fighting, and flows smooth. And right now, I'm not sure. In the past, we've had some, some things come up that that weren't addressed. But I hope that, and I think we're heading the right direction to address this. But right now, I think either one would work, and it's good to get the straw poll here. And I'd like to maybe, I don't know, the employees maybe chime in. What I see, the only thing I see, being that Harrington, is small, and the size of maintenance crew is limited. So what if, I'll pose it to people, that I'll just say Scott or Charlie, they can't get away, It's so busy and they just can't get to it. I know there was a provision in the old or current chairman manual, you want to call it, that if there's a situation where, they put in for time off and golly, something comes up and, heaven forbid, like Mount St. Helens or, something that ties them down and they can't get away, we need them. And so they're left with all these hours and they didn't get to use the benefit of their vacation. Do we want to entertain anything or rolling that over. I don't know. I know it happens, but I don't know the benefits to doing that, really. It's more of a liability, like Justin was saying, to the city. But that's something that the committee will be discussing tomorrow as well. Do we put a provision in there for that? And I know that's opening up a lot of can of worms, and that's not my intention. It's just, like I said, it's the what-ifs that will come down the road. And I'm trying to, scratch my head here and think of what could we do to alleviate that problem. But either one, I think we could live with. But I would like to have some input from some of the employees, just thoughts. But ultimately, it's our decision, and I want to make it right with them as well, and clean things up. So other than that, I have nothing really to say. I know I opened up a can of worms here, but it's something that's food for thought that we must think about. And I guess we'll have more input, going into it as time permits, going forward. And but either one, I guess would I'd be fine with either one. So I'll yield the floor, and thanks for your time.
Yep, we're going to discuss more. I think it sounds like our takeaway is that we will back burner, though that is not to say we will eliminate option one, but we will back burner discussion of option one, and we will spend our time exploring option two a little bit more in depth and see if we see problems there, and to flesh out that proposal for what we will eventually vote on. I think that's it, Nathan.
Okay, well, thank you for doing all the fancy words and talking. I appreciate that. I think we definitely made some headway.
Question, Nathan.
Yeah, go ahead.
What committee is it that's working on this? I don't know what committee the gentlemen are members of. I've forgotten.
This would be, community relations.
And second question, if I may, please. Has the Committee on Community Relations polled any of our current employees to solicit their thoughts?
I don't officially at a committee meeting. I don't believe so. I don't know if they have outside of the city hall.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that.
Good work, Stephen.
Okay.
Not just me. Thank David, too, and Nathan.
Alright, moving down the agenda, tax levy update. So, we have, as a city, an option to levy 1% a year. So, Justin maybe can explain this better, and maybe he can use words. I won't make him explain it, but we are allowed to levy up to 1% additional each year. That time is coming up pretty quick. Needs to be done by November 30th. So I just want to start out with setting a special meeting for that, so that we can vote to approve that levy if we wish to, if the council wishes to approve or to be able to vote on that. I'd like to set that for November 24th, which is a Tuesday at 7 p.m. And we will have a couple other agenda items on there likely, but that's the main one that we want to get done before the end of the month.
Sorry to interrupt. It's at 6 p.m.
Sorry. Yep, you are correct. I'm glad you did interrupt. And I know we went through this, the same thing with Justin and I did with the fire department the other night. As it's been explained to me, you can propose less than a 1% increase. However, as I understand it, if you do that, if you propose less than 1% increase, then you lose the ability to ever levy an additional 1%. So I just want to keep that in your guys' mind. I will send out the paperwork so you guys can look at it and see the numbers on it. It's just kind of an FYI, and I wanted to make sure that we were able to set that date so that you guys knew. Is there any questions on that before we get to that meeting? And the paperwork is at the city hall if you want to look at the hard copy. Otherwise, I'll send the rest of it via email.
Hey, Nathan.
Yeah.
So I'll just add that this is basically a standard procedure, something we've done every year. Every year that I've been on the council, when I was the mayor, it's something that it's an opportunity for us to do that. And like Nathan said, if we don't do it, we can never get it back. So we can't make it up. I don't know, Nathan, you'll have to clarify if we can't raise it a percent next time, but if we only raise it 0.5% this year, we can't raise it 1.5% next year to make up that difference. So it's kind of a use it or lose it thing. It is one of our biggest sources of funding for the city. And it's kind of like I just saw that Davenport did it. And it was in the newspaper, I believe, last week. They also did that. Like Nathan said, the fire district does it. It's kind of the way the tax system, property tax system works in the state of Washington. That's kind of the only option. So I think basically for smaller cities or smaller agencies or entities, I think you'll always see that annual increase that they do. So
I would like to tack on to that to just say briefly that having looked at the budget, being on the budget committee, our sources of income are this tax, the utilities, which our constituents see that as paying for the utility itself and less as the city overhead, and is therefore less movable than this. To that end, it is clear to me what our stance on this needs to be, and if it is useful to anyone, I would be prepared to vote on this tonight.
Yeah, we can, well,
Nathan,
yeah.
it needs to be done in a public hearing.
Yeah, I was just reading through here, that's correct.
Never mind then. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, if you guys have any questions, definitely get a hold of me or Janice, and like I said, you guys are welcome to come look at the paperwork at the city hall, or I'll make sure and get it sent out.
Question, this is Peter.
Yeah.
What are we levying currently? What's the levy rate currently in Harrington? Justin mentioned 0.5%. Do we not levy the maximum amount?
Yeah.
Sorry. Here we do. That was just an example. We have the opportunity to raise it 1% each year.
Correct.
And if we only went 0.5% this year instead of the full 1%, my example is we could not make it up next year and do 1.5% to make up this year. So once we get off that cycle, then we can't ever get back on it, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
And this paperwork, trying to search for it now, it has the rate in there and the increase. It shows you all those numbers, Peter. Okay, moving on. Another just FYI, we have propane tank for the McGregor building on there. You guys remember when we went through that some time ago, talking about the improvements and fixes for the McGregor building. Part of that was a heater that has since obviously been installed, and we are moving kind of on the second part of that wasn't done earlier in the year, but as the weather changes now, I was reminded that we need to get that done. So when I was a council member, I had called and checked with pretty much any propane service or company that I could find in the area that would service this location, and got some prices from them on propane and delivery, price of the tank, install, all that stuff. So I wanted to, and I can send those out as well via email. I wanted to just give you guys a heads up to look for that coming. So when we have it on the bills, you guys will be able to see that. But I just want to kind of give you a heads up on that, and look for it coming down the coming down the pipe. So I just wanted to fill you in, make sure we knew that part hadn't been done, and it will be happening quickly. Lions Club storage options. So we talked about this. I know this current council has talked about this previously, as other councils have too. Lions Club is looking for a place to store their stuff. So currently they have the flags that go at the cemetery, the Christmas decorations, some other miscellaneous stuff, and it's been kicked around quite a while, so I wanted to kind of get it back on and see if we could come up with a solution to this. And so I sent out an email, and I just wanted to kind of bounce it off the council again, of what we thought we could do, or what we should do to be able to find a good location for them. I know a cargo container was talked about quite a bit. There's a little bit of pushback on that, being, dumping a cargo container at the cemetery or somewhere else in town. But I kind of wanted to open the floor to get your guys' opinions for locations for the Lions Club to store their equipment. Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
So I thought this was my addition to the agenda.
It is. I'll let you go ahead.
No, that's fine. And so the council knows I sent an email out. So Nathan had asked both Levi and I, as the cemetery or parks committee, to do this. So,
yeah, parks and cemetery.
I sent an email out earlier this week to the council, just asking what Nathan had just said. To date, I just have Nathan's response. So we would like to make, we'd like to make a decision at the December council meeting, like an action item, so to bring it to vote and what we want to do. So any information that you guys can provide in the next few weeks will help us then formulate or bring a proposal to the council as earlier we can, but we'd do it as early as possible, but so we could try to take action at the December meeting, since it, like Nathan said, this started I think in 2017 or 18 when the original McGregor building piece, and so it's been kicked around for a long time. So you don't have to do that tonight if you don't want to. Feel free. I'll take notes, or just contact Levi or I in the next couple weeks so we can do that ahead of next meeting for the rest of the council. Thank you.
I guess my input is that, as far as I am aware, having been in numerous Lions Club meetings while this was being discussed, in many ways the most optimal solution is to put the storage container at the cemetery. It seems to check all the boxes except one, which is that there have been let's just keep it with the word pushback. The consideration of pushback against that from a visual standpoint, and that has been for me a nebulous consideration, because some of the people that are, I guess, the pushback are also some of the donors and the people who are making the cemetery run, and I don't know the details of all that. So when I hear there's going to be pushback, I don't really know, is that just one person? Is that one very important person? Is that 10 people? I don't know. So the solution that I would want to go with, until I understand a little bit more what the cost of it is in terms of, I guess, public relations, what seems to otherwise check all the boxes is putting that storage container there. If we're not going to do that, I'd kind of like to have a little more understanding of why are we not doing that. And I know that could be a sensitive discussion, but past that, all the other alternatives I've heard about using various buildings in town, there's a lot of work for that, and then the question is the Lions Club going to put in the money to bring a building up to spot, or is the city council going to spot that money? And so this is the one thing that I've heard, that the Lions Club doesn't seem to mind that they would put the money in to do this. So I guess I'll close by saying, if we're not going to go the direction of a container at the cemetery, I would probably like to hear other alternatives to specifically weigh. That would be my thought.
So, Stephen, also real quick, one of the other cemetery issues, not only from a donor or an optics type of thing, was just the physical location. So I would say half of the stuff that they store, the flags, go there. The other half, being like the Christmas decorations or other holiday decorations, are for downtown usage. So it's splitting that from that perspective. And so that's just for your information of not specific. I mean, there's some other people that brought up other downsides to the cemetery other than just the
You're
appearance.
Right. There was the discussion of if the snow has come in, can they get back in there to get the Christmas decorations? You're right. I do.
Oh.
I do take back what I said. I do remember that.
It's okay. Just
I do think that the other thing that it checks a little bit of the box for is the current building that's at the back of it. If city council members have not looked at that building recently, you should look at that building. It is in sorry state. And I think it should be taken down, and that we should put this would be something to put in its place. Maybe you could find ways of making the storage box look a little bit better by putting something on it, or we could ask the Lions Club to kind of put kind of a facade on it or something so that it doesn't look like a storage box or something. I don't know, but to kill two birds with one stone, to put a new storage container back there that can be used for this purpose, and to get rid of a building that could even possibly be a safety consideration if kids were playing around in it or on it or something. It would be wise for the city to consider doing two things at once here, in my opinion.
Stephen, this is Peter. You're talking about the building currently on the cemetery?
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know what the building is called. It's the city building down by the recycling bins where the fire engines have been stored. Is there any reason that can't be used by the Lions? Is that a possibility?
currently, right now, Peter, the antique fire truck is in there. So it has been our plan for the last 2 years to sell that truck. So if we do sell that truck, that building would be more accessible for that use. But until, I would say, the other two buildings that I think that I mentioned that the city has that could potentially use is the old fire hall down by the shop, has some bays there, and that fire truck, I guess, could technically be moved there. And then I think that's called the state shed down by the recycle area. That could also be used, but we'd have to, until we sell that old fire truck, the antique fire truck, we have to have a place to store that. So I know previous times when this originally first came up, the two building options that the city had talked about that we currently, three besides the cemetery, was walling off one of the bays at the old fire hall by the recycling center to have the Lions use that. That was, I think, where a big thing was going until the McGregor building had come up, and there was consideration for the city moving out there, which would open more of this up. But so the two buildings that had been previously discussed as viable options were that state shed by the green waste, or one of the bays in the existing fire hall, the old fire hall by the recycling center.
Okay, thank you. Jeez.
Okay.
Nathan, this is David. I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, my question, number one, does the city, do we use that up at the cemetery right now, or how much do we use it? Has anybody got an answer for that?
I don't know 100%, David. I think talking with Scott previously about it, there is some stuff that's in there. Obviously, when we had our own mower, that's where that stuff was stored. Going forward to right now, I don't know what's in there, but I don't believe that it's used that much. That would honestly be a better question for Scott. But
we had previously stored some those tables, like maybe a picnic table or something. But I think last year in a windstorm, a tree branch broke off and sheared part of I guess it would be the east side, the back side of the part of the roof and the eave. So I haven't seen it since then, but the use of that right now has been very limited, especially since the lawnmower, not having to store that, and then just because of the overall current condition of the building itself is pretty poor. I mean, it's been poor since I've been on the council. It's been talked about as a poor quality, poor condition structure.
Right. And just talking here, I do remember sprinkler controls and stuff are housed in that shed. But I'm of the opinion that it doesn't, logistically speaking, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not doing it, but if I was, to store decorations, go downtown and whatever, and tables up at the cemetery in the back 40. I think the flags, two things. If we need to build a shed, I kind of addressed that before, and I think Justin, you'd looked into it with the answer, how much it would cost, or instead of a barn raising or building. I think we could pretty much muster up enough to put another shed up there and plan for the future and store the flags there. But I'm kind of opposed to build anything that would. The storage containers are nice. They're dirt and mouse free and all that. But how do we incorporate the sprinkler? We still have to deal with that, the controls. And then, like downtown, that stuff should be localized. I mean, it doesn't make sense to haul a bunch of, crepes and stuff all over Creation. I mean, it gets old for our maintenance crew and whomever, volunteers.
Well, I will say this, David, though. One thing that's a consideration is that the decorations are Lions Club. So if we offer them, because the Lions Club's going to be in the position that if they get one area, they're either going to be taking the flags up to the cemetery from downtown, or they're going to be taking the decorations from the cemetery to downtown. So either way you slice it, something's going to have to move a little bit more. And so I'm not saying that your consideration is bad, but I would say there's a difference between the considerations that the city has for its own employees and its own business, and then the Lions Club. If we say this is what we're willing to do, and then they have to move around the Christmas decorations, that's kind of their problem.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I got a quick question, and I should know the answer to this, but behind the Memorial Hall and behind, the business, the coffee shop and such, that area, isn't there room back there for a storage container? Wasn't there an old shed back there at one time? I don't know what's currently there, and I should know the answer to that, and I apologize, but is there any room to put a container back there, or the Lions Club issue to solve that? Your thoughts? I don't know. I haven't driven back there in a long time, so I don't know if that old building and stuff is still there, or if who owns that, if it's city property, what's going on. But as far as the old fire station down here, it's an older building, and I don't know. It just, first of all, the cost. Who's supposed to front up the money? Is it by donations, or do the city coffers have to dig in their pockets? I mean, how do we deal with this? I mean, I'm not opposed to putting that, tearing that shed down and putting up a nicer, newer shed, but I don't expect to spend a gazillion dollars on it either. I do like Harrington things, but I at the same time, I do know the concerns of the aesthetic part of it, and that's why it's kind of like looking for another place that, if possible, downtown, put that stuff, and we work on getting a shed up there. This is probably the wrong time of year to start tearing stuff up and building, but it is the time of need. So I don't know. I'll shut up. I'll yield it.
So just the history of this is originally the city. So originally the Lions Club came to the city because the Lions Club right now stores their flags and decorations in City Hall. There's an agreement for that or whatever. So then the Lions Club told the city, hey, we have some money. We'll help you guys rebuild that cemetery building, and then maybe we'll expand it to be twice as big. You guys have half, and we have half, and we'll pay for part of that or a chunk of that, like to make it. They were kind of donating there as a community resource, again, because of the partnership that they had with the city for so long. And then that's when the McGregor building came up, and the Lions Club members of the Lions Club helped grease the skids on that deal for McGregor to sell to the city. Actually, originally the price was supposed to be $20,000, and they reduced it to $10,000. The Lions Club members, individually as people that knew McGregor's and talked to them about that and said, hey, this is for the city. So really, the city doesn't have an obligation. They don't have a written obligation to the Lions Club, but it's kind of in good faith. The Lions Club's been trying to do something for the city, and they were willing to help pay for this originally. And then the city ended up getting the McGregor building, but we ended up leasing it out and not using it as a shop. So the Lions Club helped us, but still then didn't get their problem still wasn't solved. And so I know earlier this year they talked about, at a meeting they brought it up about, what can they do? Is the city available? Like how do we restart this basically? So it's really, there's a lot of, let's say, technically there's a lot of options. Like they're open to a lot of things. And again, the Lions Club was willing originally to pay for, they have money, even if they're going to buy, say if they're going to buy a storage container, like they would pay for that. But obviously they don't own any land. So then it would have to figure out to go back then to be put on probably city property. And then what's, aesthetically, what's the best place for that? They've talked about down by, it is an option. So that's what's kind of, I guess that's some of the history there. Like because some people have said, well, why do we care about the Lions Club? Well, they're the ones that originally, we already have an agreement with them or whatever, but they have to go down, flight of stairs in the basement of the city hall to do this. And it's just not as convenient, I guess. And if there's some different options, so we don't have to still even do anything now. So it's more of something I think it would be a good gesture, like a good partnership. The Lions Club has done, obviously hundreds of things or thousands of things great for the city over the years. And so it's more of, I guess, in that context. So I would just say maybe what I'll do too, and if we can try to move on from this, but I can reach out to you guys. I've got some information here. Levi and I can meet or connect with each other, talk with Scott, see out some basic costs again, and then bring that back to the council for more either discussion or potential proposed, hopefully action at the next meeting if they're ready for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Yeah, just keep that in mind. If you guys come up with some other suggestions or ideas, definitely get a hold of one of either Levi or Justin on that committee or myself as well.
Question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Peter. I think we have some council members who are also members of the Lions Club. When it comes to action, how does the council feel about having those individuals vote on this issue?
Personally, I don't have a problem with it unless we thought that there was a conflict of interest or if they wish to not vote. That would definitely be their prerogative, but I don't personally have a problem with it. What do you guys think?
Hey, this is Levi. No, go ahead.
No, go for it, Levi.
I don't have a problem with it at all. As far as I see it, the Lions Club has done a lot to help the city. This is just the city and the Lions Club trying to work together to make this work. I don't see that it will cause a problem in any way at all.
Okay.
So I believe the two members for which it is a concern are Justin and myself, and Nathan is a Lion, but he doesn't have a vote in this as mayor. I hadn't considered it, though I probably should have. I will consider it going forward. However, I will say here, if anyone asks me to recuse myself from the vote, I will.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, just a comment, I agree with Levi's comments. I'm not a member of the Lions, but I support them. They've done some marvelous and continue to do some marvelous things for our town. I would just leave you with my opinion is we should do everything in our power to accommodate them and support their effort. I know it's well thought out.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, we have 2 agenda items here. Steven, you wanted to add some website stuff is what I wrote down, so I'll give the floor to you.
At this point, I think I'll hold that to the December meeting.
Okay, so we can take that off of there.
Nathan,
Yeah.
Peter, I have a couple items I'd like to add to the agenda, if I may. Is it too late?
Yeah, I mean, we already approved the agenda. I truthfully do not know the answer to that, Peter, whether we can add it or not.
Okay.
Justin, does anyone else have any comment on that?
When I was the mayor, if we had something that didn't come up and we wanted to bring it up, I think it's your discretion. But
I would remind people, it sounds like we're meeting on the 24th now also as well.
Yes,
so
correct.
We could
I can do it.
address things there.
I can do it via email too.
Okay. Alrighty, well, let's keep with that, just because like I said, to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure on if we can or can't, but yeah, if we can wait on that, then we'll go ahead. Okay, so Steven's gonna wait. We had another addition to the agenda. First off, I guess, was everybody able to obtain a copy of the email or the attachment that I sent earlier? I know, Peter, you have a physical copy. Levi, you have a physical copy as well.
Yeah, I do have a copy.
Yeah, David, I received your email.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, so let me get to it here. Okay, there we go. So I want to run through this real quick. We've had some conflict of, I guess, opinions on part of an article that was read. So you guys that have it via email, it's the 3rd column over at the bottom. You guys that have the hard copy, you guys, I think it's highlighted for you. There was some wording in there from an article that's just a difference of opinion on it. So what I want to ask from you guys real quick is, there's no action on it, there's just an opinion. If you guys would read that section down at the bottom there. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starts about 5 lines up, and there was a question on this, whether it is stating that Harrington was growing COVID, and I just want a real quick poll to ask you guys what your opinion on that is. Does it or does it not state that Harrington is growing COVID? And I'd just be curious to hear your opinions on it.
That Harrington is what, COVID?
Growing.
Oh. I've read it. May I comment?
Yep, go ahead, Peter.
I was in City Hall today when I got a copy of this article, and Nathan was present and Marge Womack was present. She wrote the article. It's ambiguous, but I think generally it doesn't state that Harrington thinks we're growing COVID in our sewer system. And moreover, supporting that position is Stephen's comment that this is weeks ago. I've forgotten the ambiance in which he made it, but I think he realizes that mammalian cell is required for propagation of COVID virus. That's generally true of most viruses. So I don't think it says that Hardy said that the city of Harrington is growing COVID in its sewer system. Just my thought off the top.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or opinions or thoughts on it?
I would say that coming out of the discussion that we had, what was it, our last official meeting, that I do not think that the statements made by Councilmember Slack on the matter were inappropriate concerns given the possibility of misinterpretation of what was written in the article.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. David, Levi, you guys have anything?
Just say quick. I resonate with Councilman Davenport, pretty much leaning that way. Well, what I'm reading, what was sent, I personally don't take it that the city is growing it. I know there might be some misinterpretations and a lot of things said, but from what I'm seeing so far and what we listened to, although I didn't get to listen to the whole minutes and everything, but I at this point, your question, does it look like that article says that? I would say no, it's not suggesting it at all.
Okay, thank you, David. Levi, do you have any input?
Just that it does not say that the city is growing COVID, true, but I would say that it is a misrepresentation of what Stephen did say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments on that? That's the last thing that I have on the agenda. Before public comment. Okay, well, we will go to public comment then. Yeah.
I do have a question in public comment. Does since I didn't hear anything else, does anyone have any comments on the Zoom stuff or how we presented the login information for the Zoom call? Since this is our first one, is there any feedback on that?
This is Peter. It seems to have worked very well. I'm impressed with how smoothly it's gone. It's been carried out.
Yes.
Looks like there's a question from Sherry. So, thanks, Peter. If anyone else has any more Zoom feedback, let me know, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I said something earlier. I wasn't opposed to it. That's definitely not the word. I was a little reluctant just to switch over. I will definitely defend Justin and Stephen both. I don't remember who or when, but this was talked about and asked quite some time ago, and I thought, well, this COVID, we're going to be able to meet, in a month or 2 months or something.